Welcome to this week's Pascal's China Lens. We're going to talk about how China has transformed a desert the size of France into a green natural habitat in just 25 years' time. This is amazing. Now, do subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so yet. I need another 30 subscribers to get to 1,000, so that would be really helpful if you get me to that target that I put for myself. So today I'm not going to talk about the future and innovation and technology. No, I'm going to talk about the past in China, and more specifically the last 25 years of China. Because in those 25 years, China has done something truly amazing. They've turned the biggest desert in the world, 640 square kilometers, the size of France, into a green natural habitat. How did they do this? Now, I've known this for many years, but this article from The Guardian inspired me to make this video because Ties van der Hoven, a Dutch engineer, wrote in this article that he wants to transform the Sinai Desert, which is between Egypt and Israel, next to the Suez Channel, into a green area. And he says it's completely possible because if you look 5,000 years ago, the area was very green. And the other reason, he said, is look at what China did with the Loess Plateau. If we copy-paste that and adapt it a little bit to that climate, then we can make that area green again. Wouldn't that be just amazing to do? And so I want to talk a little bit about this Loess Plateau, because the Loess Plateau is next to the Yellow River, or Huanghe, like they say in Chinese. And there's also the Kubuchi Desert, and both of them are actually deserts which are close to what used to be the most fertile ground in China. Many thousand years ago, this was the cradle of civilization in China, because Loess is a very fertile ground. But what happened? Well, when I visited China the first time, 1991, I visited this army of terracotta warriors in Xi'an, which is on a branch of the Yellow River. And this is the origin of China, the capital of China. The first one was Chang'an, which is the Chinese for Xi'an, many decades or 2,000 years ago. And I also visited the caves of Dunhuang in 1993, 2 years later. And that was my most amazing experience. I really recommend everyone to go and visit those caves if you're in China, because that was at the beginning of the Silk Road, and this is the place where many people who did trade between China and the rest of the world, they actually stopped at those caves to actually rest. It was kind of like a hotel, and that created all that wealth in that area. So one of the most wealthy places and most culturally original places of China suddenly all became a desert. And this is what we call China's sorrow. And what happened is that over the past 1,000 years, there's been a lot of agriculture, there's been a lot of cutting of trees, there's been a lot of farming where goats and sheep were roaming around free and taking every grass that they could and eating it, which means that the Loess, which is a fertile ground, was actually a silt that went directly into the Yellow River. And so the rain that went onto the Loess Plateau straightly went into the Yellow River and didn't keep into the ground. That's why it became so dry. And the result of that is that downstream you had a lot of floods. This picture is taken 150 years ago, and you already saw the floods from the Yellow River caused by the dryness and the cutting of trees and the agriculture upstream in the Loess Plateau. But most importantly, what I experienced myself in 93 and 96 and when I lived in Beijing is that every time in spring there was these huge sandstorms. And these sandstorms came from the Loess Plateau, which was so dry, and then with the wind going direction Japan, it went even up to Japan, these sandstorms, it actually created a huge sand pollution and was not really nice to walk into. So this was what we call China's sorrow. And the Chinese government wanted to do something about it. Now, I took a lot of pictures back in 93, and as you can see, I can confirm this was the driest and the poorest place on the planet probably at that time. Definitely for China, it was the driest and poorest place. 20 million people were living below the extreme poverty line just in that area. It's terrible. And this was just 20 years ago. Now, I could see with my own eyes that people were still living in caves at that time. Children were not going to school because they had to work the land or roam the goats or sheep around, and that was the only job that they could actually do because they had to support their family. It was really a problem back then, and this is 25 years ago. Now in 1995, China and the government decided we have to change this. So typically what they do is then they said, we can't cut trees anymore, prohibit a lot of things, free roaming of animals not allowed anymore, everybody has to keep their animals inside, and farming on slopes, you can't do that anymore. And so of course these farmers got truly upset, and they started really complaining like, yeah, but if we can't have our livelihood continue like we always have, what are we going to eat? We already have only $2 or $3 a day, now we're going to have nothing. And then the government said, yeah, but we have a plan. And so that plan was very simple. They gave economic benefits to the farmers. They said, you need to plant trees at the top of the hill. You need to make terraces on the hill. And then you need to make dams below on the hill so that the silt and the loess doesn't go into the Yellow River. And we will pay you for these jobs. And so the farmers said, okay, great. So we're going to get paid. So at least that is better than what we're not doing now. So that was positive. But they said, yeah, but this is not lasting. It's not sustainable. How are we going to get money afterwards? And then they said, well, it's very simple. We're going to give you a plot of land and we're going to give you the use rights of that land. And on top of that, once you have the use rights and the land is fertile again, then you can get all the profits from that land. And we will maybe even buy products from you in the beginning to make sure that this goes smoothly. So the farmers started believing it and they started working, and millions of farmers, millions of people, poor people, started chipping in to transform this whole area into a natural habitat. And the movie or documentary that I really recommend to watch to understand this in more detail is from VPRO, a Dutch media news outlet, which is talking about regreening the desert of the Loess Plateau. And this is done with John Liu, which didn't only document the Loess Plateau, he's also documenting every other place in the world like Jordan, Rwanda. I mean, lots of places are now copying this concept, and he's documenting all of this. But John Liu, back in 1995, was already making a documentary on how these people lived before and how they lived after. So really cool documentary to watch. Now, today, if we look, 2021, what we see is that this Loess Plateau is very green now. There's grasslands, there's rivers, there's ponds, there's lots of trees and forests again, and all the slopes, all the terraces are now used for agriculture in a very positive way, and lots more. Most important, this has created a new microclimate. And this microclimate creates rain. And so the rain comes back and stays in the soil now, which is important because now it creates this fertile ground that all the farmers need to actually make money. And so this has just happened in about 20 years' time. This is amazing. But for me, there's a social change that is even more important because that creates even more willingness to participate in changing the world and changing the planet. And that social change is that these people that lived in deserts before, I mean, if you live in a desert, it's not always the safest place. I mean, there's terrorism, there's migration, there's poverty, there's all these places that create a lot of tensions. But once you live in a green area and people make money, there's wealth, there's better opportunities for children, there's education they can have because they don't have to work like day and night on the land that is not fertile. And most important is that actually they are creating this world for themselves. And so there's a whole social change happening, which means that the economy is really booming in the Loess Plateau today. And I think any place in the world, any place where there's deserts and dry area, could learn from that. And this is the mission of John Liu, to go everywhere in the world to do that. And I do believe that is the right way to get inspired from China, to make a change and make the world more livable and maybe save the planet by doing so. So this gives you an image on how China has really been able in 25 years to completely change an habitat. And I think it should inspire us, because if we do the same everywhere in the world for all the deserts, specifically in Africa and the Middle East, but many other places as well in South America, I do believe we have the chance to actually save the planet before it's too late. Now, I hope you liked it. Next week I'm going to have another video. It's probably going to be more about technology and innovation in the future again. So do subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so, and otherwise stay tuned until next week.